I mean, 8chan has been linked to the shootings in New Zealand, also another attack in California. Cloudflare is going to go public. Maybe they took this stance to get out in front of this issue. Are you expecting more companies to do the same?
Well, I think there's going to be this growing conversation, Melissa, about what do you do about this kind of content on the internet that incites violence? Who's responsible for that content? And it was interesting because the CEO of Cloudflare actually posted a rather long blog post explaining why they were no longer going to be supporting 8chan, which did temporarily pull down 8chan from the internet. But this CEO of Cloudflare also noted the fact that they did the same thing with another offensive website, the Daily Stormer, when they saw that the Daily Stormer was posting equally offensive content. So they were saying the problem, though, is that the Daily Stormer found another home, and there are going to be other companies that are going to continue to support this kind of violent content or of content that incites violence. And the question, though, is what kind of regulation needs to come in and create real guidelines around that. We've seen Australia and other countries really try to take action around this. But here in the U.S., there still isn't regulation about providing the technology to support this kind of content.
Does this, Joanne, give the U.S. regulators the will to actually try and enforce anything? And the Cloudflare CEO in that blog post made clear 8chan didn't do anything wrong. But we don't want to do business with them.
Right. And also, by the way, the founder of 8chan said it should be shut down because it's lawless. The larger issue here is we are in the midst of an epidemic of hate speech, of incitement to violence. Here in the U.S., hate speech, it's not illegal. And the problem we have here is that the platforms, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, have absolutely no idea how to deal with this. So they've been doing it in sort of a scattershot manner. Other countries have been much more aggressive than the United States. CNBC actually reported just a few days ago about Germany. Some people are switching their location services to Germany because Germany has much stronger laws against hate speech and Nazism. I do think it's going to lead to yet another conversation about, do we need more legislation? Do we need to take another look at Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act? That's the section that allows the internet providers to have immunity, basically to be considered telephone wires.
Alan, where do you stand on these companies?
I think it's, an element that we haven't really seen is the corporate leaders really speaking out of this. This is always a political issue. It's always talked about in terms of what Congress is going to do. I think we need a hell of a lot more activity on the part of leading company leaders to come out and massively say, we've got to do something about this. Every time there's an episode like we just had this weekend, people for a day or two talk about it. Congress argues about it, and nothing happens. I mean, we have got to do something about it, and we can't just do it every week.
I don't disagree with you, but the flip side is that they're all sitting there couched in a corner, scared out of their minds that either their customers are going to abandon them or that the political class, which I'm not even sure is going to represent the public in this instance, is going to come after them even worse. And I'm thinking of what happened to Delta with the tax policy in Georgia. I'm thinking of so many other times where it's ultimately in some strange way backfired.
Yeah, but in this particular thing, I think you've got to do what's right. I mean, it's insane to have what's going on in this country, and we all should be ashamed of it. We should be marching in the streets on gun violence instead of watching Hong Kong scream about detention and exporting people.
Sullivan, so when you talk to CEOs who are either CEOs of portfolio companies or CEOs of big publicly traded companies that you've invested in historically and now turn them into that, they tell you what?
They don't speak out. It's not, as I'm saying before, they're more focused on what's happening today, what their shipments are, what their readership is, what the traffic is. They don't think in terms of broad issues. This is an issue that every one of us has got to be really responsible and act and speak out on.
I have to say that the tech platform leadership has been absent on this. I mean, I think that they're so concerned about being seen as the press and being responsible for the content that airs on their sites, that they want to keep a hands-off attitude. And I've seen this in my experience as chief content officer at Gannett, where we ran into issues like this and had to deal with Facebook and others where we saw abusive content. And it was a very, very frustrating experience.
Do you think that the leadership of a Facebook, though, or Twitter or somebody else can say, well, they didn't post this manifesto on our platform because we probably wouldn't have let it through? I mean, it was on 8chan, right? So, I mean, they keep having to kind of hide behind, we have protocols and policies and we have remedies. I mean, not that they prove good enough, but they have been able to.
But that's the conversation. But at the core of it is what we're allowing people to own and how our gun control issues. And if you solve those, I'm not saying it's going to solve the whole thing, but that's the core of the problem, is we've got too many people with too many guns who are allowed to run loose.
Sure, it's not about where you post your manifesto
exactly.
20 minutes before doing so.
Julia, can Facebook say, hey, you know what, we wouldn't have allowed this? And so our controls and the money we've spent on people policing content before it gets posted, it's working.
Well, Melissa, we just have to remember it was just a couple months ago that there was a shooting in New Zealand that was live streamed on Facebook. And Facebook has taken actions to try to minimize the chances of that happening. But it's very hard to promise that that kind of thing is never going to happen again. And there is a lot of conversation about whether Facebook should take more drastic actions. All of these platforms should, both Twitter, Facebook, and the likes of 4chan and 8chan, 8chan being sort of the destination for the most extremist content. But, you know, if these websites, these platforms are homes for community and groups, and sometimes those groups are, you know, talking about really violent extremist things, how extreme should these platforms be in terms of policing that? And it seems like there's always room for them to go further. And they've been very cautious because they don't want to be seen as media companies. They want to be seen as open platforms. But I think there will be a push for them to be more extreme in their moves to shut this kind of thing down.
It's harder and harder for them to argue that they are not media platforms.
Oh, I don't disagree, but I think they're also so scared of the politicians in Washington who are going to go after them. And that's part of the conundrum here.
I'm sorry to harp on it, but I think at the core of it is we've got guns on the street. People who have them that shouldn't have them. And if we're never going to be able to solve it, if we dramatically minimized it, these issues, people will speak out and say things under the First Amendment. They're allowed to say whatever they want, but they won't be able to take the same actions.